And we're going to take this approach, we're going to take this program, and we're going to expand it to prisons all across the state of New York, because the cycle has to stop, and we need to give people hope.
Now, as we showed you last night, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has recently come out with a proposal to expand publicly funded college education for prison inmates. Now, it's a cause that we have more than a passing interest or experience with here on RFL. For several years, we have covered, and our company has helped sponsor, a program called Hudson Link, privately funded prison education program that has helped hundreds of inmates in prisons in New York earn their degrees, with hundreds more currently in the program. And as we learned over the years, Hudson Link, it works. Recidivism rates, the rates at which inmates return to prison after their release, plummeted for college graduates to near zero. And that makes financial sense as well. Spending a few $1,000s on an inmate's education saves the state tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, down the line. But don't take my word for it. Earlier today, I sat down with Sean Pica, Executive Director of Hudson Link and a graduate himself of the program, to learn more about both the program and what it does. And for more, we're very pleased to be joined by Sean Pica. Sean is the Executive Director for Hudson Link. You've been at this for a while.
Yes.
Listen, I can go on and on about the success of the program, but when you hear the governor say what he did earlier this week, and we'll get into some of the reaction in a little bit, it must have even taken you even by surprise that the program has gotten to the point right now, and the concept of it, that now we're talking about on a statewide level, that this is an investment New York at least is considering and making.
We were definitely surprised. We've been operating for 15 years with no state and federal funding, which has limited the size of the program, but not the results. We've been very, very amazed at not only how smoothly it's run within the Department of Corrections, but also with the results of the returning men and women to the communities that have done fantastic.
Do some math for everybody, Sean. What does it cost to house and watch an inmate on an annual basis?
Currently in New York State, it's $60,000 a year to incarcerate a man and woman, while we're educating an individual student for $5,000 annually.
So then the question is, all right, you spend $5 grand, and to this point it's all been through private donations, no taxpayer dollars. How many people have graduated, and how many people have come back into the walls? Because recidivism on I guess is about 40%, right? On a regular basis.
43% nationally. New York is actually a little bit lower. We do a pretty good job at with reentry work here in New York, but if you look at the number of 43% nationally at $60,000 a year, if you look at the 303 graduates over 14 years, that's millions of dollars a year we're saving New York taxpayers.
And how many of those 303 have gone back behind the walls?
2 men in 14 years have returned to prison.
Now that obviously doesn't take into account the cost to prosecute, the victims of the crimes, and everything else on a human level. Now, put a face on this, because while you've been running this program, this is something that's not conceptual for you. You live this.
Yeah, this is not just a job for me, even though I love what I'm doing, and I love that we've been able to expand it to now 5 programs and 5 facilities with 5 college partners. When I went to prison, I was only in the 9th grade. So now the fact that I got a chance to get a college degree before I left in 2002 gave me a glimpse into a second chance. Doesn't give you the second chance, gives you the opportunity for it. And when I walked out of prison, I realized right away that even though the only thing I left with was that college degree, it was all I needed.
One of the things that struck me is you go there, and as much as it's an inspiring story for somebody at the front of the class, getting a real degree, like any other kid, there's no like special breaks because you only have a certain amount of time, that you're not sometimes on lockdown or whatever else. They got to make it do in that environment. But it's who's in the crowd. It's the families. And I heard one of them say, this is the first time I've been able to be proud of my son in 20 years or something. And you've heard these stories yourself.
The biggest thing for me was about 4 years into this, at one of the graduations, one of the daughters, who was about 11 or 12 at the time, went up to her father and said, you know what, Dad, if you can do it, I can do it.
Some lawmakers have already spoken out, and some have been in support of the program. But to those who haven't, some have echoed along the lines, hey, this is great. I'd love to have my kid get a free degree. Maybe I'd send him to prison. I think they should maybe rethink that a little bit. But speak to the argument out there that the guys who are getting a free ride that have no right for one. Talk about it from a practical level, let alone for a short and a long-term one.
I'm the average inmate. I went into prison as a teenager, came home 15, 18, 20 years later. If I didn't get a chance to get an education, if there wasn't even an outlet to get some of that, when I returned back to the community, I would have been no better, worse for than where. And what was I going to do? I was going to go right back to the things I knew or didn't know. I was not going to be able to find employment. I was going to have no credentials. Not only did I return a positive member that I could help my community, but I also was really good at the social services field and moved rather quickly through a field that having a felony background wasn't a strike against me.
Unfortunately, you're paying taxes now.
And
you're
now I'm paying taxes,
and you're
yeah.
not getting social services or whatever. So instead of being a drain, which a lot of guys who come out with no skill, no hireable ability in many cases, instead of, in fact, getting tax dollars here to sustain them, they're actually paying into the system like the rest of us lucky folk.
Yeah. And I think when I walked out of those gates in 2002, I had more time in prison than out of prison. I had no idea what the community was going to hold for me. I had no idea if I was going to be able to find employment, what my future held at all. Because there wasn't a lot of men that went before me that had been through this experience. But now, the students that are currently enrolled see all of us that have gone. There's 165 men and women that have walked before them that are out there now doing really well. That gives them not only the motivation to do better, but the hope that there is something out there bigger than what they've experienced in prison.
And as I said, opinions change when people get to see it with their own eyes. If you could bring the average viewer at home here, or even a skeptical lawmaker out there, to sit in with the rest of the crowd at a graduation ceremony, I've seen so many opinions change on this. I mean, you have people from the Warren Buffetts of the world to people on the right and the left here. I mean, Steve Forbes and others who contribute to this because they believe in this. Why do opinions change when they get to see the results firsthand?
When those folks that do make it witness the graduates, the prison staff, the administration, the families of the graduates, the children, it is a life-changing experience. We're going to be airing Sing Sing University on HBO on March 31st, which will capture that prison graduation experience, so everyone will be able to see it, even though not firsthand.
Well, again, here it's going to be fascinating how this all plays out, as many things are when they get up to Albany. But if this were put to a vote, and it will get mine here, it's one of the best programs I've seen with the most impressive results, not just for the inmate and not just for society, but for the families of those guys who can finally hold their chin up here and talk about their dad, their brother, their son, or mother, or whatever the case may be. Sean, thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, everybody, RNN's going to be right back after this quick commercial break. Please stay with us.